Hi. Thank you for attending today's reading. Let's begin. My parents and I caused her death. I hate them and myself for it. I honestly don't know. But I feel like I want to share this today. I've been starting at a bottle of cheap whiskey for far too long now. Anyway, this all happened almost 6 years ago and obviously the account is a throwaway. I use Reddit normally and I love browsing this sub, so I'm confident there can be some understanding here. Or so I hope. So let's rewind the clock back 6 years to a time when my sister and I were 16. Wish I could Anyway, my sister Jane was the sweetest person I've ever met. Well, I didn't think that highly of her at the time. Besides being sweet and nice to almost everyone, she was a perfect tomboy. You know. Short hair. Boy clothes. Interested more in cars than dolls, if you get my gist. This has all happened over a longer period of time. She started with the more boyish look when she was 13. My parents thought it was a phase and told her to dress normally. After many fights they gave up and allowed her to dress that way. Those were some terrible few weeks. Many slaps, beatings and a lot of yelling from my dad and constant crying from my mom. Now I know the reason was they didn't want their daughter to be seen as one of those freaks. My parents are not religious. At least not more than your average family. They never forced their beliefs onto us. I got into the atheism craze when I was in my early teens and they didn't care for it. Just told me not to tell people around. A lot of our family is religious. My dad was a police officer. Pretty high-ranking as well. He loved his job and was quite liberal in my opinions. Extremely inclusive of other races and whatnot. He was also really lax with the rules. He often showed us his gun, and on my granddad's farm he told us to shoot with a similar gun. While making sure we understand proper gun handling. Care for the weapon. How to reload. Not to put a finger on the trigger and to never ever aim at anyone. The issues of gay and trans people came up very rarely, but I remember someone on TV speaking about it. Or maybe it was a movie, I can't recall. But both of my parents were disgusted just by the thought. This was when I was 11 or 12. I asked about it. Like the curious little shit I was. And my parents explained to both myself and my sister about what a gay is and transgender person is. And so on. They outright said that those people are sick and should be in a hospital. Same like pedophiles. We already had the talk about not going to people's cars, etc. Or murderers. My sister didn't really react, but I did jump on that. With my friends we made these dumb stories and included a lot of gay and trans characters getting killed or being locked somewhere in prison. My parents praised me for being creative after hearing a pretty damn long story for a 12-year-old. Anyway, year later my sister started with the tomboy stuff and I didn't think of it much, but fast forward 2 years. We're both newly 15 and it clicks in my brain why my parents were so opposed to it and what my sister really was. She was transgender. I felt mad at myself for even thinking my own sister could something so vile. I asked her several times and every single time she told me to screw off or just refuted it. Few months passed and our relationship turned sour. We barely talked. I couldn't look at her, and whenever I started talking Jane would make every effort to leave the room as soon as possible. Then came a night. I was staying up late playing World of Warcraft after my friends logged off. I went to grab a drink from the kitchen. To go down the stairs I always passed her room. I heard a sound. It was so strange, like a cry of a weird creature. Shitting my pants, I opened the door. I saw her crying on the floor. The sound was her trying to be quiet. For that short moment everything was gone. I ran to her asking what's happened. Helping her up. Sitting her down on her bed and giving her a hug. It was the first moment we shared after such a long time. She told me the truth. She was afraid. Hurt and trans. I don't think I've ever been more conflicted than in that moment. I hated that she was trans. I hated all trans people for infecting her with the virus with the illness. But she was my sister. Someone I shared so much, who was there for me when I was crying. I couldn't let go, and so I just held her and stayed there through the night. None of her words reached me. She fell asleep that morning, and because it was Saturday I put a blanket over her and let her sleep. She slept until 2 p.m. when my mom woke her up with a yell. She looked at me with red eyes, mouthing, "Thank you." I remember that clear as day. After lunch I told her I want to talk and that we did. I suggested we tell our parents that she is trans, and they can get treatment for her and she can be cured. That was the moment it all began to go downhill. My mom overheard. "Are you trans?" She screamed and called for Dad. Jane kept silent, so they turned to me asking if she admitted to it. I nodded. My father beat her behind with a belt, leaving a few cuts. They kept screaming. Jane kept crying and I just stood there. Our 16th birthday came. Over the few months I did warm up to trans people and read a lot online. Asked people and used a few forums and message boards to talk to trans people. My parents didn't want to hear a word of it. Thought Jane and I were born on the 14th of February. Valentine twins, haha. I liked the date for 2 reasons. It was like the whole world was celebrating my birthday. I got a cake and a ton of gifts, and just like every year I bought something small for Jane. This year I was conflicted, but I decided to buy one anyway. It was this adorable huge teddy bears. Not your standard Valentine's one, but a proper and expensive teddy. And just live every year. Our parents had work the day after. I couldn't stomach it and give Jane the gift on the 14th as I planned. Even my parents didn't celebrate her birthday, just mine. I thought what a great idea to give it to her on the 15th when parents aren't there. I felt really bad for her, and so I wrote a letter. Tried my best at proper cursive. It was a mumbling BS of how I still love her and parents don't understand. I ended it with, "I'm glad to have you as my brother." I remember writing those words, feeling kinda weird but happy at the same time. After they left I opened the door, but he wasn't there. I put down the bear and put the letter on his huge fluffy head. I left the room and went to play World of Warcraft again, waiting for him to find it. I did hear the door to his room open and close. I think it was almost an hour before a sound went through my headphones. A sound so fucking loud my ears were ringing. It took me a couple of seconds to put one and one together to realize it was a gunshot. There it was, that thought of what happened. I didn't want it to be true. I wanted to run, but at the same time I wanted to avoid knowing. But what if? So many fucking what ifs. If I didn't play that fucking stupid game and just waited for her, god damn it. I opened the door and he lied there, in a pool of his own blood, hugging that stupid teddy bear. That momnet was the longest moment ever. I fell down, just fell. I didn't even try to hold myself up. Ended up with a broken finger. After coming back to my senses I called an ambulance. It was too late. It was my dad's gun. That's why he wasn't in his room. He was getting into his safe to get hold of it. After few days I found an envelope with my name on it. There was 5 60-day cards for World of Warcraft, for the best brother. A note read inside. It was his gift for me. It took my weeks to redeem them, but after I did, I made a character. Named him a weird variation of J, as he went by to friends. And our last name. Played him for a long time before quitting. I wanted to take my own life. To join her somewhere. Today all those stupid hearts and celebrations are just a reminder of this. I'm sorry for rambling. I'm sorry for everything. Thank you all for your support. Less than 3 and the gold and silver. You are all so sweet. Thank you. End of story. That is all for today. If you want to support my automated channel, feel free to drop a like and subscribe. See you tomorrow.